Welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 ways that you are underestimating your own success and the 3 mindset shifts you need to make in order to have sustainable, long-term improvements in the way that you can communicate. Let's jump right into it. Number 1, understand the difference between discipline and motivation. For many people, when you first decide that you'd like to improve the way that you communicate, whether that is through public speaking, through the way that you have one-on-one conversations with others, whether that's the way that you lead a meeting at work, whichever domain you're in, that initial drive, that initial push to want to improve, that's motivation. Motivation is really a great motivator, for lack of a better word. It's a really great initial reaction that will get you started down the right path in wanting to improve the way that you speak and the way that you communicate. And that's great because we need that initial push to get us to take action. But here's the catch. Motivation doesn't last. Motivation always runs out, and no matter who you are and how motivated you may feel at the moment, don't get discouraged. Motivation tends to be more short-term. And then that's where discipline comes in. Whereas motivation is a fantastic way to get you started and to propel you into that initial action, discipline is what will sustain that transformation. So discipline is really making a commitment to a specific behavior or a specific action that you will take and pushing yourself to do that even when you don't want to. So let's say you are someone who wants to improve the way that you lead meetings at work. That initial motivation to want to improve may lead you to YouTube videos, podcasts, purchasing some books. But after a few days, after a few episodes, you may start to feel like you're hearing the same things. You may start to feel like it's difficult to implement it, or you're not sure which advice is relevant for you. You might try it out in the next time you're leading a meeting and find that it's not going as well as you anticipated. You will start to lose motivation. It's a natural human phenomenon that occurs. So again, don't let it discourage you. But it's in that moment when you lose that initial motivation, that moment is what determines whether or not you become successful. Because if you allow discipline to take over, if you develop that self-discipline within yourself, where you say logically, I understand that this is what I'm working towards. I understand that this is the goal that I have. I also understand that in the moment, I don't want to work towards it. I might be too tired. I might be discouraged. I might be too busy. This might not be a priority anymore. Understanding that when those behaviors happen, and they will, it is your job to push yourself through them and to continue putting in the work that you know will get you to your goal. That is discipline. Motivation will come and go, but discipline is really your internal drive to commit to the goals that you have set for yourself. And without that discipline, you just won't see long-term sustainable change. Instead, you might see peaks and valleys of when you get motivated and take some action and then fall off. Okay, that's why so many people experience phenomenons of signing up for courses and then never completing them, purchasing a bunch of books and then letting them sit on your bookshelf, signing up for the gym and then not going, right? These are all signs that you are functioning based on motivation rather than self-discipline. So if you are looking to improve your communication skills, commit to yourself. Now, it doesn't have to be a massive commitment. It could be simply taking one tip and implementing it on a weekly basis. It could be watching a new YouTube video or listening to a new podcast once a week and implementing something that you heard in your everyday life, right? It could be volunteering to do additional speaking engagements or leading additional meetings or volunteering somewhere where you're exposed to new people that you've never seen or interacted with before as a way to commit to improving the way that you communicate. Whatever your goal is, pick one action and a realistic timeline for yourself. So whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, and stick to it. That's the discipline that will help you see true transformation. Okay? Number 2, you need to hold yourself accountable. Now, this goes quite nicely with developing discipline, but it's a little bit different. So, holding yourself accountable is really the idea of taking responsibility for how things are going. So, when you're developing discipline, you are developing the habit of doing the thing. So, listening to that video, following up on that podcast advice, reading that book, and trying out those techniques, right? That's discipline. Accountability would be more so making sure that you're being responsible with what you're doing, taking that action, but also tracking how it's going. Let's say you are someone who has fitness goals and you want to get yourself to the gym so that you can meet those fitness goals, right? Let's say you want to train for a small marathon, okay? Discipline would be getting yourself to the gym for a workout 4 times a week consistently. Accountability would be the added responsibility of tracking whether you are not progressing towards your goal. So if you're training for a marathon, are you on the treadmill? Are you outside running? Are you increasing the distance that you're able to run on a weekly or bi-weekly basis? If you're not, can you hold yourself accountable to make the necessary changes, make the tweaks, do something a little bit different to help you shift back towards your goal in a way that's aligned for you? So if you're looking to improve your communication, it's one thing to consume information. It's another thing to passively try out the things that you're learning. But if you're really going to hold yourself accountable, you need to have that inner responsibility to say, hey, this is what I learned, this is what I'm going to implement, and this is how I'm going to implement it, right? So let's say you learned about the importance of pace, so how fast or how slow you speak, so that if you're someone who speaks like this and is really, really fast, and then you realize that you need to slow down your pace, well, now taking accountability is making sure that you are practicing varying your pace in real life settings. And then taking it one step further and tracking how it's going. So if you are trying to work on your pace, but you find that you get nervous and you're still speaking quickly, well, the accountability there would be to acknowledge it and see how you can tweak it so that you can keep working on it. Okay? So they build off each other quite nicely. But accountability, at least from my perspective, is really you taking the ownership of your progress and being responsible for monitoring when you're getting off track. Okay? Now, my third tip for you today, become friends with feedback. This is easier said than done, but understanding that feedback is your friend and not something to fear really transforms the way that you will experience personal growth and development, and it'll just skyrocket it for you. So for many people, feedback is associated with criticism, at least internally. When someone offers you feedback, or when you know that you're going into a feedback session, perhaps with your manager or supervisor, for most people, there's a sense of anxiety, some nerves, a bit of a punch in your gut when someone tells you something that they didn't like, right? When the feedback is received. And that's because there's this association with feedback being negative, feedback being criticism, feedback being, you did this wrong, you are not enough, here's how you failed, and that's how we see feedback. But I'm going to challenge that view for you. Rather than viewing feedback as criticism about yourself, criticism about something that you did, view it as really the perfect opportunity to improve. And again, I know that's so much easier said than done. But hear my perspective on this, okay? Imagine that you are doing something incorrectly, right? Imagine you're leading a meeting and you're speaking so fast that your team can't understand what you're saying, right? So again, if you're someone who's working on pace and you speak like this in a meeting because you're nervous and the nerves get the best of you, so you just want it to be over with, so you just get all your ideas mishmashed into one big sentence. If you don't receive the feedback that that's what you're doing, you will continue doing that time and time and time again. And so what is worse? The embarrassment of making the same mistake repeatedly, or the embarrassment and the initial discomfort you might feel once receiving the feedback, but then changing it and improving and getting better? Which would you rather? For me personally, I would rather experience momentarily discomfort so that I can tweak some things, understand what I'm doing wrong, and get better, rather than facing my peers, my colleagues, potential clients, and repeating the same errors over and over and over and over again because I'm not getting the feedback that I need to improve. Okay? Something to consider. So when you're able to view feedback as your friend, as feedback as a way to grow, it stops being scary. And instead, it becomes normalized. It becomes something that you can experience on a regular basis as just a check-in, right? Just like if you were holding yourself accountable, you would track how you are progressing on your goals. Feedback is a phenomenal way to think of it in the exact same way, except it's including external opinions of your progress. We have many, many biases. We see ourselves differently than how others see us. It's just a common occurrence that occurs. So you might think you're not making as much progress as you really are. And so sometimes the feedback could be positive. It doesn't always have to be negative. That's just the misconception that we have all developed with our fear of feedback. So when you start to view it as really an opportunity to track how you're progressing from different perspectives, when you start getting feedback regularly, it starts to become the norm and it stops being scary. So rather than sitting there in fear, taking it personally, thinking about all the ways that this person might be wrong and they're telling you the wrong thing and you disagree and there's no way you're that terrible and going through the spiral, learn to take feedback objectively. And there's beauty in learning to be neutral with feedback because the feedback that resonates, the feedback that you're hearing repeatedly, that's usually a sign that that's feedback that's applicable to you. But feedback that you disagree with, feedback that seems a little bit not quite accurate from your perspective, take it or leave it. Maybe the person giving you the feedback has a completely different point of view. Maybe they're not quite aligned with your goal or your vision or your mission, and that's okay. But it's the process of sitting there and learning to take feedback from others neutrally and objectively that will completely change the game for you, rather than getting nervous, getting anxious, or getting angry. So become friends with feedback. Normalize the process of receiving feedback. Don't take it personally. Take it objectively as just additional information from a different perspective that will help you progress. And the more often you can put yourself in situations that you're getting feedback from others, the faster you will get acclimated to it and the faster you will start to see progress. Why is the coaching industry so big? Because people need mentors. People need an outside perspective to help them see the things that they can't see about themselves. So that's just what feedback is. It's a way for you to get additional information and help you grow. And when you can come at feedback from that perspective, from that place of neutrality and maybe even open-mindedness, the way that you experience feedback will completely change, and the way that you deliver feedback will change as well. Okay? So to recap, number 1, understand the difference between motivation and discipline and learn how to self-discipline yourself to start working towards your goals consistently. And consistently at whatever pace works for your lifestyle. Number 2, learn to hold yourself accountable so that you can be responsible for your actions and your progress and course correct when you need to. And number 3, become friends with feedback so that it's no longer icky and negative and stressful, but just another third-party perspective with additional information that helps you grow. Okay, so those are my tips for you. Comment down below with your favorite one or the one you're going to implement this week. If you're interested, I also have a free training series, a 3-part video training series, all about how to start improving your communication skills. I'll link it in the description. You can check it out and just start improving the way that you're speaking to others today. And I'll see you in my next video.